Hi there, well, another lovely little project to put in your tiny A4 sketchbook. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on another leaf, because people are always asking me about leaves, and this leaf is a lovely example of mixing red and green together. This is the Lollo Rosso lettuce leaf, and it's got this beautiful spiky movement to it. It's got little flashes of light. And because if under the lights a live leaf would wilt very quickly, for the purposes of this tutorial we'll be working from a photograph. But it's got this amazing array of pretty greens, and for this we're going to use our reservoir of mid-green, mixed green. So I'm going to start with a nice little wallop of that for the colour, just to start off. And then we want to mix up. I just give my brush a little clean. It's a good tip if you don't want to spoil your lovely clean water, is to give your brush a little clean underneath the pad. Makes it a little bit easier. And then we're going to mix up some lemon over here and take a little bit of our green reservoir and get a nice lemon green. What I'm going to do is add a little bit of Sennelier yellow deep to that as well, and then water it down. I'm going to grab a little piece of paper. I've got my little book that I was using for colour swatches, and I'm going to put a little bit on the corner there and offer it up to my photograph. And I think once we've mixed that with water, or dropped that into water, I think that's going to be a really good colour. It's nice and vibrant. As it fades it will dull down, so I think that's pretty good for all the bright bits. Now what we need as well is we need this lovely rich dark red, but also it goes very black in places. So I'm going to use my mid-green, my ready mix green if you like, as a basis for this. So I'm going to scoop that up. And I'm going to add to that, oh, she said, using her best brush again. Do you know, I'm so naughty like that. I can't remember making that mistake so many times as I've done this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix into that some Helios purple. And these two colours make a really nice brown. We might as well use all that puddle. We don't need that dark green just yet. Helios purple and a little bit of dioxazine purple. So we've got the green in it because obviously the green and the red are mixing on the actual leaf itself, so we might as well mix the colours together here. And then if I have that little reservoir there, I can go to one side and I can add some Rose Madder Lake to this end to make it quite pinky. And then at this end I can add some French ultramarine, and that'll make it a lot blacker and darker without going really dead looking. And you can add a little bit more dioxazine purple to that just to make it a little bit more intense. So we've got a nice little range of browny green, pinky brown, purpley brown, and the nice bright green. And all we need now is to clean our brush and just take a bit more of our mid-green and have that as a little reservoir up there for the darker greens that we're going to need. Right, so I'm going to, you know what would be a really good idea, and it's just occurred to me, here we are, a light bulb moment, is I'll use that one for my mid-green and I'll use my other nice clean mixing brush. I'm very spoilt to have two mixing brushes, and I'll use that one for when I need to add other colours, and that way I don't have to keep messing up my nice clean water, but also don't have to mess up my damp pad. Just turn that round. Good, problem solved. So now all we need to do is I'm going to rub out my measurement. I'm always rather thrilled when something comes to 13. 30 is my lucky number, and when I say my lucky number, it's just one of those numbers that follows me through life. You know, lots of things in my life have been 13. I've lived at number 13 as a child, and then I used to sit at table 13. Very often when I'm painting series of things, I tend to paint 13 things just by accident, but so that number has followed me. And what I'm doing here is just lightening the pencil on the lower part of the leaf. Doesn't need to lighten at the top because that's where all the dark colours are going, but I'll keep it a little bit lighter at the bottom using my blue tack roll. And I'm holding my little pad in place with some blue tack as well. You see, it's very versatile stuff, very, very useful. Now I'm going to use a size 4 brush today because it's a nice size for that. We've got lots of things to think about, but we're going to work from the top to the bottom. And what I'm going to try and do is do this a little bit more freestyle and enjoy the process of the watercolour a little bit more, but also because we're working on this bocking for paper and it doesn't like to be over wetted, so it's quite nice. It's good for 2 really good glazes, and then beyond that it prefers dry brush. So I'm going to try and do this as sympathetically to the paper as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop what looks like green water, and it is green water. I'm going to drop the water on from the top, and I'm using quite a lot of water. You can see I'm leaving puddles. The reason being is I want the water just to sit on top for the moment, because I've got lots of little angles and areas to get into, and if you leave a little puddle, it just gives you a little bit longer to get around and into all those little serrations and little corners, and it's very important to have that time. So a lot of water. Don't be afraid to have a puddle and then pull the puddle into the little peninsulas. Quite nice there's a little bit of green in the water because you can see where I'm going, and when we're working with something as dark as this, it's quite handy. So I'm going to take the water down into a good stopping point, which is down in between these veins here to there, and then I'm going to take this one up and underneath that vein there and just let that bleed out there. Because I think, and this is what I would always recommend, is I think that's going to be quite a tricky area to do. So I don't want to have too big an area wetted and then have to wet it again in order to get on. And if I take it down in that shape, then I can easily glaze on beyond that. So the colour I'm going to need first is this deep purple. We're going to drop that in the darkest area. It's going to spread, so be prepared for that. So just pick it up on the tiptoe of your brush so that you can just dab it in very gently. And I've gone beneath this bit which is curling back because that's a completely different colour. So it's nice to have that sharp edge already. And I'm going to drop it into the darkest areas and then tease it out into the lighter areas. This is one of the things that I like to do. And the water will always make it move for you, so be gentle where you take it. So I'm looking across here, we've got dark coming through down there. And you can see it's lightening because it's mixing with the water, so it's not as intense as it is on the palette. I'm going to drop in a bit more down here and up. Once I get confident, you can go a little bit faster. It's a windy day today, you might pick up the wind in the background. I was driving back from the gym the other night and felt like I wasn't going to get home. I was going to get blown off the road. It was very scary. Luckily, the trees didn't get me. So what I'm doing here is I'm just teasing it out because this is all nice and wet and just settling while I'm getting on with all the fiddly bits. So I'm going to drop in a little bit more up here, still wet, that's good. All the time the colour bleeds away from where you put it on, then you know you've got a bit of play time. A little bit down there, a little bit up there. So what I'm going to do now is clean my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of the cup green, the mid green, and mix it with a little bit of the lemony green. So I've got somewhere in between. Wasn't meant to put it there, got sidetracked there. And I'm going to drop the green in between. That wasn't meant to be a poem, it just happened that way. A little bit of green. Mix the green down here. I'm going to go around that little highlight and up into here. Now you can drop the green into the purple, it will push its way through, that's okay. Just here it's starting to dry, so that's a bit scary. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that lime green, add it onto there, and then very quickly pick up some of the purple and add it into there, only because this area is quite nice and dark. And then very quickly just soften this bit away, just give it some water to soften into, and then carry on with the purple and a little bit of green. You have to wash your brush very quickly or have two brushes on the go, but I find that sometimes more confusing than having one. Now what I want to do is I want to take all the water out of my brush, and anywhere that's giving me a little bit of jip, just sort that out, and all you do is just lightly feather. Just going to grab a little bit of the pink brown up here on this side. Just giving myself quite a big area to do, but I think we've got time. And then where the light bits are, you just want to soften so you get a nice soft edge. Should just be time. There is. So I'm just softening. And anything that you haven't put on, don't panic. It's all about letting it mush in at the moment, but the highlights are super important. So I want to get rid of that green that I put on there. So I'm mopping that out because I wasn't concentrating just for a split second. Just dropped my green brush down where I didn't want it. And what you're doing here is a clean damp brush and just wipe through and just lift out, and you should find it lifts fairly simply because it's all just sitting on top at the moment. And lift out any lights that you need quickly. That's all got to go dark, but we'll do that in a minute. A little bit of light all around there. I'm just going to wipe it like so with a clean damp brush. Now don't at this stage worry if you get a little bit of feedback or cauliflowers, because it's actually quite nice when that happens for the Lollo Rosso because there's lots of interesting colour changes. But what you can do is, if you have got a cauliflower, is you can dry your brush out like I have here, and you can just tap very gently with a dry brush just to stop it feeding back any further. So you're just tapping in and sort of using your brush a little bit like a little mop, just to stop it from moving around. But all of it's changeable at this stage. So we've got a lovely sort of map of colours going on there now. I'm going to let that rest, because even if I come back and put in the bits that I've missed, it might bleed back into what I don't want it to bleed back into. One of the things you can do though is you can use your eradicator, and any little veins that you can see shining through, you can run those out. It's a little bit of dampness on the eradicator. Find where you want the vein to be and just sweep it out. It's only going to be very, very gentle at this stage. But there's a nice light right down the middle there, and I want to get it out. You can use a bit of masking fluid if you want to, but with something like this, it's so small and tiny, it's very easy just to whip the colour out with the eradicator. A little bit of water and just move the paint along. Nothing too dramatic. So I'm just going to lift out some of those little lights before it dries, and then we'll move on to the next section. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I've taken out a few of the little veins. It's quite good fun actually. It does come out really well on this paper, which is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the next little stage, and I'll stay with you. I won't put this to music because there's quite a lot of things to think about. So on this next peninsula here, we've got quite a lot of highlight. So you've got to work around that quite quickly. So I'm going to take the water here. There's quite a nice little bend there, which just gives us a nice break to finish the glaze on. And just drag that water. So put a nice big reservoir in the middle there. That gives you a bit more time. Nice big puddle. And then just pull it out into the serrations. It doesn't matter if it doesn't go right up to the edge, because I'm sure while you're moving the paint around you can push it up to the edge, but it does need to have some travel through there. Okay, so we've got the water on. Just going to double check. It's quite a lot of water, that's good. Just going to mop a little bit out of the middle. And then we've got all of our colours on the palette, but they'll need just waking up very quickly. So I'm just going to wake up this one, which is the dark one. Wake up the brown one. Only need a little bit of water in there, but it's really difficult to work with them if they're sticky. So just mixing those two together in the middle. And the yellow one's quite wet still. So we're going to drop these colours on very quickly. So we're going to have our green down here. You're going to work quickly, but at the same time you've got to keep looking at your subject and make sure you're not putting colours in the wrong place. And because it's a painting, it's our painting, it doesn't have to be exactly right, but it does need to be botanically accurate, if you see what I mean. So it has to work as a leaf, but if the little bit of red seeps into the green in just a slightly different way, no one's going to worry. So I'm going to take that little bit of purple round there, and then you want to pick up lots of this colour so your brush is nicely full, and then just drop it around. Get it into these little tiny peaks and troughs. And just drop that around the corner there. Can lift a little bit of light out in a minute. Just get your brush right up on its tiptoe. And then I'm going to go for the browner colour on this little peninsula here, drop it into there. If you've got some light on the edge, don't take the colour right up to the edge, because the paint will follow the water and it'll give a little bit of colour when you start moving things around. So a little bit more up here. Now you can see it's starting to dry out here, so here's a little tip. We go out, get this little bit of colour on there, quickly clean your brush, and then just catch the edge of it with some water. And then with not too much water on your brush, just quickly run over so that it gives it another quick glaze. Picking up the green and drop that down there. Trying to keep that bit of light across the top. So I'm going to have another little patch. Oh, that's dirty green. We want to clean green. A little bit of clean green. And that comes over there. And then back to the brown on the edge and through there. Okay, so for the small details, it's probably best to just do a little indication and then wait for it to dry and put those little sharper small areas in. So we're just looking at the broad general lay of the colour. Don't feel like you have to put all the detail in at this stage. We're just going to try and get the shape, the highlight, and just a mapping in of the colours, as it were, because that's what's going to give it its life. We don't want the highlights to be dirty. So what I'm going to do now is soften that. I'm going to pick up my little bit of purple here, just bring that around the corner. And then I'm going to run through for that little vein coming through, that midrib through that section there. And then just lift and soften. Unusual colours when they start smushing together. It's quite nice actually, so it creates a lovely sort of earthy colour. A little bit of bright green up here. And then you've got a moment now, you've got lots of things mapped in, you can see how fast I went, a little bit of panicking going on there, but not too much, and just mop. This would be something which would be really nice if you are doing a sketchbook, is maybe to have half of it done and then do another leaf and do half of it, and then maybe you could do the other half just drawing in all the veins or whatever. It's quite nice to have that half and half done. But also you could just do half just to practice, and then if you're having a complete breakdown and thinking, gosh, this is harder than Billy made it look, or it's not actually something I want to paint, but I don't mind doing a little study of it. You know, don't feel like you have to do the whole thing. So I'm just going back now, like I did before, and just wiping out just a few of those little lights here and there. And again, you've got to be quick with your brush. Lift it out, clean it, and then lift again. And you can also use your eradicator if there's something really important. There's a little flash of light down here. Just smooth it out, lift away, and another little flash there. Just lift away. The quicker you do it at this stage, the better, because then you've got the bright white retained and protected. Here there's a little bit of complication, which I'm going to do on the next stage, so I don't want to do too much of that. It's important, if something is nearly right, to leave it to dry, and then you can move on comfortably and come back when you're feeling a little bit more relaxed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map in the rest of the leaf the same way, but before I leave you, I'm going to show you how to do the green bit, because I think the green bit's quite important. So let me just show you that little green peninsula. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the water over to the other peninsula, take it up to the vein, and then just down that little corner there. So it's just one little lobe to do. Plenty of water. Mix up your green so it's nice and fluid again. And I'm going to drop that in, nice and bold. So here we can be quite comfortable because it's all green down here. So we can drop that colour in, get it into the serrations, get the shape right, and just let it sort of sit and smush around. And because it's green, it's quite easy to lift out. So I'm going to take it up to the light, jump over the light a little bit, so I don't have too much to lift out. And then out to that edge, and just there I'm just going to soften that away, because I can come back and do the next bit when this is dry. While I've got that nice bright green in my hand, I'm just going to run a little bit of that into the vein there. Oh, went too high. Let's bring it back. So that's just settling nicely. Now what you want to do is take all the water out of your brush, and we're going to mop. We're going to mop across here to get a little bit of light there, next to the vein, which I did in pencil so I could see it, and then across from the vein, and then in a nice sort of half moon shape there, and then back. So it's all about creating that illusion of light there, and then just leave that to settle. Once it starts drying out, you can lift out the veins. I'm just going to test it and see if it's dry enough, but you can just run the brush through the green just with the tip of your brush, and that might be enough just to lift it out. So it's still a little bit wet, but I'll remind it I'm coming back. So just run through, and a nice little bit of light just there. So that's with the green. The green's a little bit easy to do because it's just one colour. But where it's joined onto the other one, that's when we'll wait for this bit to dry, and then we'll put these colours on and soften them into that area. So at the moment what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right the way across here and do these areas over here, and then when these are dry I'll go back over there. So now I've got everything mapped in, and I hope you enjoyed doing that. I hope you did that with me, or if not, you have a go at it, because it's really good fun. It's quite challenging, but it's a lovely mush of colours, and it's quite nice sort of lifting and moving things around and not being too fussy. I think that's quite nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that top bit there and show you how to build up the colour, then move down and then give you a little bit of information on the lighter bits. But don't panic about the white bits, because you can see with the eradicator they lift off quite beautifully. So what I want to do now, instead of doing more washes, I'm going to be really a little bit more controlled. So I'm adding a little bit of Helios purple and dioxazine purple to the brown, which is purple and green. So to make it simple, a bit of the cup green mixed with dioxazine purple and Helios purple to make a really rich, sort of gloopy deep purple. What we do is we just put this nice rich purple up here and just bring it down alongside the vein and alongside the midrib. Leave it as a little reservoir there, and then just take it through. Nice little sort of shape there, and all you do is you look at the shapes, just mimic the shapes that you're seeing. I'm just going to flick into there. Then clean your brush, take all the water out, and just very gently catch the edge and just soften it in. I was taking him to the station. Then for the lighter areas, what you want to do is you just want to just put a little lighter mix of it and just move it alongside. So I'm going to jump that little vein there, plop in a little lighter area there. And what you can do is you can add a little bit of other colour, you know, so if you wanted it to be slightly bluer, just grab a little bit of French ultramarine and mix it alongside, and that way you can just add in slightly different tones as you move across. So there's a little bit of blue in that watered down purple there, which is quite nice for that colour. I'm going to do this little patch here, pick up a little bit of the darker colour and drop it in where it gets a little bit shady. Pick up the darker colour again, and then alongside that you want to put in a nice little dark patch down here. So a little bit like a jigsaw, but once you tune into it, you can start moving around quite nicely. So every time I put a little colour on, I stop, make sure I get it trained and smoothed in, and then as you're moving around you're sort of starting to get those lovely deep dark tones. So I'll pick up a little bit more here. Let's make a little patchwork through here. So we've got a nice little dark bit there. I often give them sort of labels like, oh, that's the bit that looks a bit like a telephone, and this bit looks like a little jelly bean sitting next to it. And if you start identifying the shapes, they're easier to find your way back to. Now what I tend to do with the very dark ones is let them settle in for a bit, just let them settle and dry, and then it's easier just to sort of slightly tease the edge of it to get a softening, because if you go in too soon, sometimes all the black colour or the dark colour will move in there too quickly. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to run my brush right down to a fine point and just run a few of these little wiggly, very tiny little veins up through here. Just a little bit of darkening alongside the veins, and a little vein coming up the midrib there. Sorry, not the midrib, the middle of that little point. And that should be dry now, so I can just tap the edge of those little shapes. Anytime you just want to feather it through to the next area, just run your brush out and just tap to bring a little bit of that broken colour down. So you're only really working with the top half of your brush, because you just want that little bit of control. Now up here, just do this little bit up here just to give you an idea. So I'm just going to put on this nice sharp dark Lollo Rosso red up here, and jump over the highlight, put a little bit more of the dark around this corner here, a little bit on the edge there. So really just working back in small sections. Then I'm going to use that colour that had a little bit of French ultramarine in it, which is just very pale. It's going to give that a little wash over there. And that should just soften the edge of those other marks. And then if I wanted to bring a little bit of bright light back, there's a nice little vein coming right the way through the middle. I'm just going to use my eradicator and just sweep through. Just a little bit of encouragement, that's all it needs. And then for the extra little bit of detail, we're just going to gently tease that across and put in a little sharp serration. It's going to dry really quickly. That's 3 realies. So you've got your brush, your paint drying out. So if you get your brush and really roll it so you've got a nice fine point, just before that really settles and dries, you can have a really good sharp edge. Because the dark is going right next to the dark that's already on the leaf, you should be able to slow the brush down, get the brush right on its tiptoe and get that super dark crisp edge, and just attack those little niches that need a little bit more definition. And if there's anything that needs softening or working in, use a damp eradicator and just wiggle over it. So if there's anything that you think, oh, that's just too hard, I wanted that a little bit softer, a little bit lighter, the eradicator's the man for the job. So you can see that's starting to really take control, take shape there. And I'm just going to do that little corner, and then we'll put some of it to music because it's all very similar. What you need to remember is if you're doing this in a more complicated area with more colours, is to keep your colours mobile. So always stop, make sure they're all mixed up, ready to go, because there's nothing worse than getting to a point where you need a colour and then you find out that you've run out of it. So before you start any section, just make sure that you've got all of your colours ready to go. And if you at all feel like you're getting lost and you don't know where you are, stop, find your place again, find out your little loops. You know, if you're working around this loop, you can find where you are, and so make sure that you don't put colour where you don't want it. Not that it's the end of the world, but you know, if you've gone to all that trouble to do a really beautiful portrait of a Lollo Rosso leaf, and then you've got the colours all in the wrong place, it sort of defeats the object a bit. So I'm putting a little bit of green here around that light, keeping that tiny little light on that edge because it's rather nice. And while that's settling, I can drop in just a tiny bit more colour for all those little bits around the veins. As we come round the corner here, the dark goes right up onto this beautiful little shape here. Just gives that a nice little edge. So we've already got some green on there, which is fine. And then what I can do is just soften behind that, so we get a nice little combination of the two colours. So what we're going to do is just work that top bit down, so we get that looking really nice and sharp, and then we'll come down and we'll talk about how to make this bottom bit keep the light but still make it look very three-dimensional. Off we go.
So you can see it's quite a big job mapping everything in, but what's quite nice is having all of the colours ready. And look at the colours, don't they look lovely? I mean, they're quite gloomy, quite sort of autumn colours, but they're quite elegant as well. And you can see that where I've got a very strong pattern of veining, you can work around in little patches, that's fine. And where it's all in the shadow and there's just sort of lots of higgledy-piggledy things happening, you can just sort of use your wet in wet technique and drop in. Again, it's always good to wait and let things dry before you come back to them. And mapping your way around is quite tricky as well. So I've been building up these little areas and then letting them dry and then come back to it again. And when you come back to it, you can add a little bit more detail. But this is what I call detailed mapping in. So because there's so many little highlights, you have to sort of work around them, but you can still build up the detail after that. But it is quite complicated little areas that you're working around. Anyway, as I said I'm stopping for the green area down here because the green area is a little bit more subtle and it's also got some different colours in here. So on the pink that we mixed up over here, the sort of green, we took a little bit of that brown, didn't we, and added some more Helios purple. I think it would be a really good idea to add a little bit of yellow to that to sort of warm it up just for this corner over here. So just add a little touch of Sennelier yellow for the areas up here where it's just gone, I suppose the word I'm looking for is a little bit more sort of raspberry in colour, and you can put that little bit of colour in and soften around it. And I've done all of this with a size 4, but you could, you know, on these smaller areas you could use a size 2 if you wanted to. And I'm going to water that down a little bit as well, and just up here just sort of do another little soft glaze over that little point up there just to soften that fold and also bring the colour down a little bit. So as I did these bits earlier on, you know, these are nice and dry, so you can put these little tea washes of prettier colours over the top and also knock things back if you wanted to. I'm just going to put a little bit of that colour
over the green just to knock that back. So let's go down here till we've got a little bit of the light that we saved from when we put the first wash on. I haven't taken the pencil off this side. I did remove it from that side once I'd got that bit mapped in, but this still has the pencil, so it's a nice little guide. And I'm going to use some of that brighter green here and just draw the little shape, the little cushion here in. It's a slightly darker green. I mixed it up a little bit darker. I just added a bit of the darker green to it. Do a little square like that and then very gently soften inside just to get that little cushion as it comes down there. And then just soften inside it so all of that outline then just sort of moves in towards the centre. And then you just jump up to the next bit. You can leave it a little bit longer if you wanted to, but there's such small patches that they dry really quickly, so you can move on quite quickly. And I'll do some along this edge here. Again, just drag a little bit of that colour, a little bit dirtier, just to give you some shadow, and then just soften above so you get a little cushion there. So I'm going to mix a little bit of clean green just next door to that, so I've got some brighter green as well. I'm going to use a little bit of my green mix and a lot of lemon. Just water that down so I've got a brighter green. And what I want to do is I want to, around this side, just come in with a little bit of that bright green, but water it down straight away. So I just want the smallest amount and just bring that over like a little wash on that side. So you put a little bit of the bright green on and just soften it across that area. And we'll do that on this edge here because we've got this lovely light here. So what we're going to do is just take the brush down, sweep up a little bit of green there and round the corner. Take it out into that little tiny serration there. And then again, clean your brush and just soften the edge of that. Just catch the little bit of edge and then walk away. Some of my serrations were a little bit longer than they should be, and I think this is the trickiness when you're working quite quickly, because this is a nice soft little study, and although it's got some impact because of the light and shade, it is actually quite a it's more of a watercolour than a botanical study, I think. So what we're going to do over here, because all that little bit of warm pink, is we're going to, now that that's dry, we're going to put a little glaze down here, because we want a sort of cloudy effect on this corner. So I'm going to pick up some of that raspberry colour and drop it in alongside the vein there, so that it just sort of plays into that water, just to give a little bit of a cloudy effect, and then down here alongside the vein. Okay, so when you're doing those little bits of cloudy area, just make sure that you soften them and then leave it alone, let it dry. Don't worry if you lose a little bit of your veining, you can retrieve that quite easily with the green and the red mixed together. It's a kind colour. So you can carry on choosing little areas. What I'm doing here is there's a nice little sort of flat area through here, so I'm going to put a little bit of water, a little tiny bit of pink on my brush, and just do some very gentle little taps of pink through here. It's very subtle. It's quite a pretty little area, so very flat, and just some nice sort of, I don't know what you call it, smushy pattern. And if there's anything that you've put on that's now dry, all you do, and if you don't like the edge of it, all you do is just wiggle the edge. So I don't really like that edge, so I'm going to wiggle it away. Just as long as you don't sort of push too hard. Now I'm taking some of that really nice dark colour that we've got, that deep purpley colour, and I'm going to continue while that's wet so that it blends into there, and just bring that round to create this sort of little smushy curl here. So I'm tapping the colour on, and just here it's dry, but I just want to get that by the vein there and tuck it around the corner, and then again quickly getting the tip of the brush and just smooshing the edge. Nice and simple, nothing too crazy. Little areas require a little bit of patience. Now the vein actually disappears around the corner, so I don't want to have that little bit of vein there. I just want to tuck that away. So I'm getting some really nice darks just to sliver down there, and then again just smoosh it in. So you can see there's quite a lot of dancing to do with the tip of your brush. So what we're going to do now is to just put these little cushions in here, and then I'm going to come back and just show you these little pleats across here, how we get this sort of pleating effect. And then we'll just do some nice little finishing touches around the leaf just to get it nice and sharp. So onward with the little cushions. Again, take a little bit at a time, don't try and do too much, and really try and find where you are on the leaf so that you've got it as accurate as possible. So I've got in all of my nice little cushiony bits on that lovely turn, and now what I want to do is I want to come back with a slightly smaller brush, well, a lot smaller brush. I'm going to come back with my fine liner. So once you've got everything sort of mapped in, it's really just a matter of working your way down the painting and just checking all of the edges. And what we can do is we can remove the pencil along this side now, because obviously when you're just mapping in, it's very easy to lose the crispness of the serrations, and so it's quite nice to just let that go. And always on green projects, or projects that are predominantly green, I always leave the pencil on just that little bit longer, because I know it's going to lift away quite nicely. So I'm going to clean that all up on this side. Always be very gentle with the erasing. Make sure that you're not sort of, really tiring the paper out. And don't use, I don't think you need a putty rubber. Putty rubbers leave some kind of grease. I don't know what it is about putty rubbers. I don't like them. They're great for when you're working with pastel or graphite, because you can just sort of lift out little highlights with it. But it's sort of like, I don't feel like I'm in control of the erasing. Anyway, so we've got rid of the pencil, that's all good. Now what we want to do is come up here and just talk about the pleating. And all you need to do is just make sure that you've got the colour correct. I'm going to add a little bit of Rose Madder Lake to my deep purple. Just going to warm it up a little bit. So it's a dirty purple with a little bit of pink in it. And if we were to mix that from scratch, we would mix a green with a yellow and a blue, then add in some purple, and then add in some pink. So it's quite a gloomy mixture really, but it's very good for this. So what I'm going to do is just find these little shapes in here. First of all, I'm just going to get this little pleat there. And you're just picking up a little tiny bit of paint on your brush and drawing on the shapes around the little highlights. I've already put some colour on, so it's a little bit easier to find my way around. And don't use, I don't think you need a putty rubber. Putty rubbers leave some kind of grease. I don't know what it is about putty rubbers. I don't like them. They're great for when you're working with pastel or graphite, because you can just sort of, lift out little highlights with it. going to go up and over and in alongside that vein. And I'm going to map all the little shapes in, which is not like me, but they're quite small, and you can soften them quite quickly. I'm just going to leave some little gaps for the light, and then I'll go back to my number 4 brush and just very gently just wiggle alongside those marks. So I maintain my highlight, but I soften those little shapes. Well, you could spend hours with a dry brush doing lots of little tiny dry brush marks, but this is a lot quicker and it gives a similar effect. And it's actually quite nice and sort of soft. And you can lift out if you've got anything wrong quite quickly, so don't panic if you put something in the wrong place. Just get my brush under control. So I'm just going to darken that little area there and then start bringing in some of the little pleats on this side. Just going to change my fine liner. I think that's one I've given abuse to. It's very important to look after your tools, and if they start to look a bit sort of, you know, tired or pulled about, the best thing to do is to just dip them into boiling water. I think I've got a little tutorial on that, which is very helpful, because there was somebody on Facebook the other day that was asking about that, and it worked, which is great, because I haven't changed my synthetic brushes yet at all, and normally by now I would have bought myself a new sable, so I'm quite excited the way they're holding their shape. It's very good, very economical, and also a little bit more ethical. So what we're doing here is just tapping in a little bit of the red to make the creasing, and then just softening along to soften it in. The longer you leave the shapes, in other words, the longer you leave the paint to sit there, the more precise and more crisp the edges will be, because you won't be able to soften them that after too long. So if you want them very smushy, like up here, you go in quite quickly, and if you want them to stay put a little bit longer, you leave them on there just a few seconds longer. So what we can do now is just have a look over the whole leaf and just have a look at the edges. So I'm going to have a look at the serrations. So up here we've got, they're a little bit blunt, because sometimes when you're painting and you've still got the pencil on there, you can assume sometimes that you've got the serration really nice and pointy. You remove the pencil and realise it's just the pencil that was nice and sharp. So I'm using my fine liner. I'm going to go into the very point of the serration and then very gently just sweep out, and then with my number 4 just soften so we don't get too much of an outline. So it's going up into the point, just overlapping, so you get it nice and prickly, and then pulling the brush back if you need to create more colour, and if you need to soften it in, just use the point of the number 4. So we'll go around and add all these nice little sharp prickles to our Lollo Rosso leaf. So we're right at the last bit now. This is quite a nice project to do. I'm really enjoying it, and I like the contrast of the light and the dark and the curliness of it all. It's quite a nice study. It's interesting, isn't it, how something that, okay, it is quite a complicated leaf, but it is quite a simple thing to paint. It's quite addictive. I think you'll enjoy this one. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to mix up some lemon. And it doesn't matter if it's not entirely clean, because it'd be nice if it had a little greeny tinge to it. And I'm going to use that like a little wash to colour in the veins over here. Just laying that very gently over the top, and just pushes that down. And anywhere where you need to knock the veins back, you can water down your pink as well, sort of pinky brown, and use that to just go over some of those veins up there. We really just want the veins to show up where they show up, if you see what I mean. And anywhere where you think, okay, that could do with another little very light wash just to knock things back. So I'm going to just put a little glaze through there and continue that little shadow through there. Just soften that edge a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit more dark just through here, just make it really black, just there. Soften around that, so that's less of a tea wash and more of a little patch that just needs softening around. Well, you might go dark enough in the first place, so don't make it darker if it doesn't need to. A little bit of lime green over that, and maybe just a little yellow wash over this part of the leaf here, just to make it look nice and cozy in there, away from the light. So it's a transparent glaze that we put over just to sort of pull everything together, colour the veins, and that way where the veins are bright and white, they really shine out, and where they're not, they don't. And you can also, some areas like in here, we can put a glaze over the whole area there and go around that little spot there just to make that stand out. Perhaps just one more little glaze over here and into that end piece. And obviously with a photograph you can keep coming back and adding more detail. But what I want you to do with this project is think about how we're looking at how things tumble in and out of the light, and how you can mix colours as you're going along. So you've got all of your colours laid out, you put a little bit of water, and then you just drop on those little colours and sort of smush them together to get that really nice feeling of things growing and moving together. So I'm going to leave my Lollo Rosso there, and I'm hoping that you're going to give that one a go, because I can see them now on the website looking really fantastic. And I think it's a great project if you're a bit scared of greens, and you mix up your green cup from our little demo of how to mix the middle green, and that way you've got that reservoir. You can just keep pulling it onto the palette and adding your other colours, and hopefully that will give you the freedom to paint without worry. So give it a go and enjoy the lettuce.